The joys of sex, the joys of what you as a man, you moving into the world of seduction, of life, of who you are. This is one of the greatest things that you can learn, yet so many of us are afraid to learn it. So many of us have turned it into, we've allowed to, even as a culture, turned it into something that is not just shame, not just fear, but of blame, of war, of divide, of all this shit that now we call sex. This is the TSL Podcast. I'm Steve Maeda, and we're going to dive deep into this subject today and get into not only the philosophy of it, but how you as a man can live better. Because if you are a sexless man, if you've given away that, or taken what perhaps is, and I don't want to get into much conspiracy here, but the lie that culture has told you about sex, then what do you have? You're constantly reaching, you're constantly fighting a fight against not having an expression, not having a force of nature, not having you. Guys, this is a podcast that we record to share the message of what we do. The Sexual Life is our home. If you click the free stuff link down below, you can find out so many different things on dating, sex, relationships, personal philosophy, even how to get in shape, how to shape your mind, how to get in touch with your purpose, all for free. Free stuff link, videos, PDFs, and most importantly, our communities. The dream and the goal of this, other than the 800 videos that we have for you for free to learn about sex, life, and the philosophy of sex, is to build not just knowledge, not just a community, but a program where you can tap into and be a part of. That's where this is being recorded. It's October 4th, 11:39 p.m. We got 6 guys from around the world talking right now about this very subject. And in fact, we just said, hey, we're going to record. See, this got inspired because one of our guys, he's in India, and he went on an adventure. And see, this is one of those things. This is one of those things that we miss from our life. We've made seduction a point of control or bragging rights or something that makes us powerful. But we forgot that the truest form of seduction is just the nature of man walking out in the world or woman walking out in the world and experiencing what he feels. And he's on this trip. And it's so beautiful because it reminds me of the happiest moments of my life, one of the greatest moments, but it also brings up a lot of other things that we confuse ourselves about sex because we're sold a lie about it. And it made me think of Zan, it made me think of Hans, it made me think of all these great guys who are true seducers, and there's not enough of them out there. Because a man that can walk out in the world with nothing, a man that can walk out into the world and face the world when he's sad, a man that can walk out in the world when he's weak, when he doesn't know, when curiosity is truly fueling him because he doesn't want to give up and walks out on the horizon, that man is able to find so much more in himself than anything else. See, when we walk out with the lie that culture tells us or that society tells us, which we all got raised in, which is that we have to be powerful, we have to be strong, we have to have things, we have to be alpha, we have to represent. When we walk out in the world with that, we just fuel that lie back into us. We fuel that garbage. Yet, when we don't have any of those things, we feel that we're nothing. And see, here's one of the beautiful things about sex. And this is where it comes into this point, the true knowledge of what this young man is learning and on this road and what we all learn from is that sex changes you. See, we're all afraid of being affected by somebody. We're all afraid of how much power women have. We're all afraid of how much power other people have or how much we're oppressed by. But see, the beauty of sex is you don't walk away with any of the concerns of that. When you are moved by a woman, she changes you. When you are moved by sex, you are left empty. When you give yourself and when you use your true, whatever you want to call it, but the interpretation of what being alpha is on a woman and you take that out, you're left with nothing. And she is there to take care of you. She's there to feel you. She is there to harbor this beautiful fucking thing that you've done. And see, we don't talk about that. See, when we do that, we're unprepared as men. We're unprepared to know what to do in between a woman's legs when we've purged our entire soul in it. Man, you could even go so far to argue is, did we believe in God before sex? Probably. Did we believe in a soul before sex? Probably. But man, one thing that reaffirms that in me is when I get into orgasm, when I get into those things, and when I get into my mind reshapes when my dick is in a woman, I'm looking in her eyes and it's a totally different woman. It's not even a woman, it's a god, it's a goddess, it's somebody changing me. But see, the problem is when we're unprepared for that, when we make sex this big deal because we don't talk about it, and it's for power, and it's for shaping, and it's for how we can finally make something in the world and have an identity. The problem is when we get into that moment, we don't see it for what it is the common practice of what it is, of this thing that we could do every day with so many different women, with ourselves, with our nature, which is within us, that can happen at the drop of a hat. We make it a big deal. And we see it as a god. We see it as a god, and a god can be greater and too much powerful and tyrannical when we don't have anything, when we don't have a sense of self, when our sense of self is that idea of power. Man, this is what we've made sex. One of the things that I'm actually happy about this now, but there's so much of an awareness of how flawed pickup is and how distinct and true seduction is. But one of the things about it is pickup is exactly what you wanted it to be, exactly what we made it. It's the result of men in fear. It's the result of men who don't know. And it goes on in so many different ways. We are the result of our fear. Our ways of living, our ways of ambition, our ways of the forces of nature in us are that. So that in order to make money, in order to be successful, in fact, the philosophy of sex, man, what it will teach you if you really give yourself to it, shows us that the way to the nature within us, the power, the purpose, the things which make us human beings, that drive us, to the ends of the earth, that drive us to fulfill something, man, we've made them control, fear, dominance, shame, power. And we've taken this beautiful thing and distorted it into that. We look at the heroes of our lives and we see these people who made money, these people who've done all this shit, and that's great. And that could be part of your story. But the real heroes of your life are those men that could give themselves completely in a moment. And not have to fight back for their masculinity, not have to fight back for their pride, but be able to lose, be able to be themselves in a world that they didn't have control over, and learn to live in it. That is the hero. That is the God. That is the what you will find gives you your true satisfaction. But that moment, back to sex, when we give to a woman in that way, that moment, we don't know how to handle it. We stopped being a culture of men with dick and balls. We stopped being a culture that was willing to show that. Instead, we show that with so much fucked up shit. Rather than showing our erection, rather than showing our skin, rather than sharing our sperm, rather than sharing our orgasm or putting it into somebody else or putting us on the line to feel that, we hide it. And we say, fuck you, bitch, I'm a man. We say, I have more power than you. We say we're better than you. We say whatever. We get into these arguments, or perhaps we say, you know what, the feminine is great and I'm going to forego my masculinity for that because having a dick and balls and having an erection is too much responsibility. It's too offensive. It's too much for the world to handle. And when you take that out of the world, what do you have, man? It's a sad thing. So when we go on this journey and we find it, man, fuck. God damn it, that's beautiful. And see, here's one of the things, that we get into, because perhaps this is a story for another video, but the way of seduction, we never speak that language. And you can't learn a language. You can't learn a language from speaking it once a month or once a week. And I'm not talking about just fucking, but I'm talking about lovemaking. I'm talking about the kind of fucking that changes you as a person. And sadly, we've made it so we can be so detached from sex. It's crazy. We've made it so possible to have sex that we don't even feel it. We just walk around with hard dicks and wet pussies and this desire, but we don't know how to actually be ourselves. The hard dick leads us to the pussy, but then we just go like, hey man, this is for the high five or some shit. And so we walk around in this sort of way, so we can't speak this language. This is not how we were born to be. We were born to speak the language of sex. We were born to have it. But we put all these cages around it. We made it this huge deal when we had it. And so the thing is when we have it, we don't talk about this as men enough. Man, this is a huge point. Huge point. Fuck, man. If you could get this and understand this, is that your mind of seduction, that moment of arousal, that time with a woman is very, very different than the time when you're having sex with her. You know, that arousal, that falling in love with her, that watching the sunset with her, the seeing the light bounce off of her face, her dress, her scent, all those beautiful things that come into where we're building up to it is so much different than that time of when we are fucking. And when we are fucking, there's different times within that where we're in love, where we're in lust, where we're in rage, and we're feeling all these different things. And then there's the time afterwards when we're purged and we're dead. We feel that we've given everything. Man, I mean, so many times I've sat in the arms of a woman where I gave it, and I ejaculate, I orgasm, I get to the end, and she looks at me and she's like, are you all right? Are you okay? Do I need to call a doctor? Because there's so much that goes to it. My mind there is different then. My mind then immediately forgets all the things that I was thinking when I was fucking. And then there's the social mind that we come in and totally different. And see, how we define sex so much is through the social mind. And we start to say things like, oh my God, you know, can I be in a relationship? Or what is this? Or tell me what this is. Or I want to be with you or whatever. And it was funny because I was talking to a waitress earlier today and I said, man, men are more like bitches as soon as you guys fuck. And women change too as soon as you fuck. But as soon as you fuck, men become all the characteristics of women because we don't know how to be. We don't know how to be. We get jealous, we get angry, and all these things could be natural, but the story of sex goes so much deeper. Man, there's so much to it, but when it comes down to it, if we could take the shame out of it, if we could take the shame out of fundamentally being a man, if we could start to tell the story of what it means to be you, to have a drive, to have a sex drive, to put that into your life, to put that into your passions, to share the stories of what that is, to share the relationships, the confusion, the not knowing, the getting lost, the hero, the true hero's journey, not always having power. The time when you don't know, the time when you feel that it's the wrong thing, the time where you walk around with that hurt or that broken heart or wishing she was there or that jealousy fearing you, but you walk on that road into the sunset of hope, into the answer of what life could be. That's where you create your hero. That's where you create your best self. That's how you create it. And so many men don't want to have to do that. They don't want to have to put themselves on the line, man. It's a sad fucking thing. And man, that is the saddest thing, is now we have a culture of men and women who are willing to live in everything in life fueled by this desire within them, fueled by the fire in the belly, the yearning of their sex within them. Yet, instead of looking for that, they see and find their sex in power, in the divide, in the definition of themselves, in the ownership of who they are, in how much status they can get. And little do they even recognize or ever get to the point. And man, people have whole sex lives like this. It's terrible. Where they get to the point where they can realize that it isn't about the ownership of themselves, but about the giving away of themselves and having it influenced by another. See, we're all afraid. We're all afraid to be affected by other people. Our highest value in our society is how strong we could be as an individual. But you cannot have strength without unity. We look for, in every single way of our culture and what we're seeing now, is how we can find our power in our differences. Whether that's our differences as a man and how different we are from women, or our differences is how somebody who lives in Texas is how they might be in California. And we think we gain power in this. Man, that's not how you find unity. That's not how you find the nature of man. The strongest thing in you is not your brain, but it's your evolution that has been behind you for all this time. And in that, fueled absolutely by sex, fueled by thousands and thousands of years of jealousy, of sadness, of confusion in relationships that propelled men and women, whether they wanted to or not, and hopefully they wanted to many times, into the bonding of selves to create life. And man, we think about this. We think about if it was so flawed, if it was so chaotic, if men and women are so inherently different, if we're supposed to be at war with each other, how the hell did this evolution happen? And maybe there's a different story to it. Maybe there's a longer journey that we need to look through. Maybe we need to look at sex outside of the culture that we've created. Maybe we need to look at sex outside of the culture of where there is ownership, where there is a definition of how we're supposed to live. And maybe we need to start looking at the real history and nature of ourselves. And man, in that, there's a fucking beauty. A beauty. In any case, we started this off with this idea of sex moving men. And there's a lot that you could talk about it. But in any case, look, man, the sexual life is about living with your truest self in the world and being able to share it with the world. And if we cannot do that, man, we're living a lie. If we cannot do that, we're seeking something else to fulfill us, to put fuel in the fire that is slowly growing larger, but dying faster. And that is a sad thing. In any case, this is the Sexual Life Podcast. This is what we talk about. But not only is this philosophy and all these different ideas that we move around and swim in and talk about because we've been having sex, but we talk about how you can have sex and the different social dynamic videos that we have and the different videos on connection, rapport, sexual techniques, relationships. They're all there, and they're actually there in like many, many different playlists that we have. Over 800 videos of this. Community men talking. Join us. If you like it, subscribe, be a part of what we're doing, and we'll talk to you soon.